Hi there. In the second installment of TRHT and Anthropology, we are going to be talking to Dr. John Arthur on the collection of material culture and post-colonial archaeology and his role in the Gamo Heritage Project. First and foremost, I'm going to share a clip of Dr. John working in the field alongside Ethiopian archaeological experts to show what it actually looks like on a field site.
So after we excavate from 10 centimeters, in every 10 centimeters we take from the bucket the soil, and so to be able to find artifacts like the pottery, the stone tools, the bone, beads, anything that's cultural material, we have to sift it through this screen, and also to find any charcoal as well. And so that's what Daniel is doing now, looking through the material, and then we're collecting it into specific bags for every level.
Be beneficial. Um, okay, so first question, just trying to get some background on when you started your work in Ethiopia. Just how many years have you been working in the field with the Gamo people?
So the first time I went to Ethiopia was in 1995 for the summer of 95, and been working there off and on since then. Um, so it's been 30 years. That's crazy. Yeah. 30 years I've been working in Ethiopia. Yeah.
What was the original scope of your research and how did it evolve over time?
Well, the first time I went, I was kind of like piggybacking on a project that my professor and uh, Dr. Kathy Arthur was, she was doing her PhD, and they were interested in working with hide workers who use stone tools, but I'm not a stone tool person, so I had no interest in that. So they would let me occasionally go off and interview potters. Um, and we went to 7 different ethnic groups. And it was kind of a pre-dissertation project for us because by going to those 7 different ethnic groups, we could then kind of decide which ethnic group we wanted to kind of concentrate on. And for both of us, the Gamo was interesting in different ways. For me, it was interesting because the Gamo have a very strict caste system, and artisans are socially, politically, economically submerged, not really considered full citizens. And so I wanted to see if I could look through their household assemblages of their ceramics and see this caste system at work. Does the material culture actually reflect this social hierarchy? And long story, it does. And so my initial research was just to, and based on, I always tell my students, you need to know the methods of what people have done in the past, because most people, you're not making it up every time. You're using what other people have done and have worked well, and then supplementing that knowledge into your own research. And that's what I did. So I looked at other researchers that did ceramic ethnoarchaeology around the world, and they went into people's households and measured their pots. And I was interested in looking at what's called use alteration or use wear of ceramics. And I went in and picked 3 villages. This is before GPS. So I had to map all the villages using a compass and just tape and walking, and interview everybody within the village so they get to know who I was and build rapport. And so I did that. And then through the mapping, as I'm wandering around the villages day in and day out, they got kind of used to me, and accepted me into their communities. And then eventually picked 20 households in each of those 3 villages to focus on their ceramic assemblages. And so I would set up a time and we would go in. I would go with a couple of people, and they would help interpret and then help me measure. And I would interview the women about each pot and what the whole life cycle. So I just kind of thought about pots as their own individual being that go through their own trajectories just like humans do. And so, where were the pots produced? Where did you buy them at the market? And interviewed very poor hide workers, very poor potters, very rich farmers. So I got kind of the whole gamut of this hierarchy. And then once I interviewed them and got all the information that I needed from them on each pot, I let them go because these people are very busy. They're farmers, they're craftspeople. They have to make a living. Um, and then we would then take each pot and measure all the different attributes that archaeologists or ceramic ethnoarchaeologists measure. And the women thought it was very funny because why you want to look at my, dirty, unclean pots that I haven't scrubbed? I'm like, yes, that's even more exciting. And so they would laugh at me. And then some of the pots were so big that I have to go into their household and measure in the household. But usually they would bring them out so I could see them because the houses are very dark. There's no electricity or any light in their houses. So, um, and then I interviewed a bunch of potters and really just got a feel of pottery making and distribution and use and discard in the Gamo. And then we decided, after I was interested in ceramics and Dr. Kathy Arthur was interested in the stone tools that hide workers were producing, that we wanted to go back and really understand the history of the Gamo rather than just kind of a snapshot of what was happening between 1996 and 98 when we lived there for 2 years, as a Western science. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes it's, poo-poo the idea, but, the science does tell a story, but it shouldn't be the only story that it tells. We need to be able to work with local communities that have different worldviews other than our Western worldview to be able to tell and interpret the things that we are finding archaeologically. So working with the community just to be able to, as equals or more, as even more, we're just there as stewards and building that rapport with them, to have them tell their story in connection with what we find through the scientific perspective of archaeology, right? So, and I think that just working with elders and they've lived a long time, they've seen a lot of changes in their lives, that things that they maybe like and some things that they don't like. So being able just to talk with them and listen to them, building that rapport, I think is a healing process for both them and maybe a little bit for us too, in terms of just realizing the importance of why we are here. I mean, to hear that these people are struggling and going through these trials and tribulations, and getting that perspective into the, if you will, the tunnel, the walls of what we're trying to do, trying to bring that in and just listening to them. And in some cases, it's been very challenging, because not everybody thinks the same. Um, and that's worldwide. But to realize that you have elders that want us to work there, who want us to tell that story, tell their story about the history, to bring their story to the rest of the world. But at the same time, you have the next generation, their sons who need to farm this land that is one of their most important archaeological sites, they have to feed their family. So you have these conflicts that are going on between generations. You have conflicts that are going on that represent maybe an old way of thinking in terms of indigenous religion, and you have these new religions coming in like Pentecostal religion. And so you have that conflict because the Pentecostals don't believe that people should practice their indigenous religion, that it's not a Christian way of thinking. So you got these different generations that are in conflict about how to use the land. You've got how the land is a powerful symbol to represent the indigenous religion that the new religions don't like. And that causes, in some cases, where you have elders that are, there's not that many left, they're scared. They're scared that they might be maltreated because of the way that they think. So getting those perspectives is all part of doing community archaeology. It's some cases it's showing those conflicts and then trying to work as best you can through those. Takes a lot of patience. Not every day is going to go exactly how you want it to go. You're going to run into obstacles that you never envisioned. Um, and that's the case with any type of archaeology. But when you're dealing with community, when you're dealing with trying to bring those perspectives and have them at equal weight as the archaeology, the science, is challenging. And there's a lot of conflict resolution that you're having to do. A lot of meetings, where you're not doing any type of science, you're not doing any interviews, but you're just having meetings to try to talk to people to get them to understand what community archaeology is. And we've been lucky now because the community has now seen, because we worked there so long, we've done that longitudinal research, we put in the effort, we build that rapport with the elders, we've built the rapport with the younger generation, and we've built that rapport with the political entities in that are part of that community. So they've designated certain lands that the elders wanted to be focused on building a cultural center, museum and cultural center for the Northern Gamo people, the Borda. And so now the onus is on us just to try to find money to build that so that their history is preserved. They have all these materials from past generations that they're holding on to. That needs to go somewhere, because what is happening is this new generation is coming in and buying these objects and then destroying them because it represents the old religion. It represents the indigenous religion that's not Christian. And that's a fear that we have, that these heritage, intangible heritage markers of the Gamo are going to be destroyed once the elders leave the planet. So that's, it's not easy. It's
Conversations can lead you to really interesting places and places you didn't think they would go, especially on topics around racial healing and transformation. Dr. John is a member of the Choctaw Nation, and that identity heavily influences his work. I was able to chat with him about how it influences his work with the Gamo people and how it's changed his perspective as an archaeologist as a whole.
so my background is very complicated because my mother, her mother uh, was Choctaw, and left Oklahoma because she didn't want anything to do with being a Choctaw, and moved to California like so many other Okies did. Um, and that history was lost. And my other side of my family was very, my grandmother on my dad's side was the matriarch and spoke Swedish. And it was a very Swedish centric family. And they made fun of my mom's Choctaw, but we didn't know really that much about that side because it was just pushed. It was buried, and it wasn't allowed to come out. And then when after my mom died, my sister started doing all this archival work and realizing that our family went to the Supreme Court to become Choctaw because we were denied because they didn't want to give people land with the Dawes rule. They didn't want to give us 160 acres. And my family took it all the way to Supreme Court and won. We didn't know any of this. And then all of us had to kind of come to terms with a new identity. And so that has definitely opened up, it's been a transition. It wasn't like overnight, like, oh, all of a sudden, okay, I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation. It was, yeah, that happens, but it takes time to get that into that psyche, right? That your identity is now changed. And um, so I think now, heck, it's changed me. Much more, I mean, it sends kind of right now getting kind of goosebumps just thinking about it because I feel like I do represent a community that needs to be an advocate, and I do appreciate indigenous archaeology and community archaeology, and I have a different perspective about it because I am Choctaw than if I wasn't Choctaw.